Hello, everybody. I'm with my friend Sally, who is a gerontologist, and we've been chatting about memory and why some of us, especially people like me, are just terrible about remembering people's names when we're first introduced to them. And it's embarrassing. And she's going to help me maybe improve that. So thanks for joining me today, Sally.
Well, I'm so delighted to join you, Jennifer. And quite honestly, if we look at human memory from the perspective of neuroscience, all of us are bad at names. It's not just you. Our brains have evolved to remember certain things, but not other things. And proper names are one of the things that we're just not that good at.
Well, that's interesting. So let me tell you a story back when I was doing portrait photography. I had a family of five come to my studio. And knowing that I was not great at remembering names, I was determined to pay attention, mentally repeat the names as they were told to me so that I didn't default to referring to people as like their title, like mom, dad, grandma, because, it's not necessarily the most professional thing. But that's generally what I ended up doing. And so this family shows up and the mom introduces herself and she says, my name is Irene and this is my husband John and this is our daughter Laura and my son Paul and our other son Patrick. By the time I looked back at quote mom Irene, her name was gone. And as she was giving me each person's name, I would be like, this is mom, her name is Irene, this is dad, his name is John. And I mean, I was trying, I didn't have umpteen seconds to come up with other tricks. And it was so embarrassing. I had to just tell him, I'm like, I really was paying attention, but I just, I'm just terrible with names. I'm sorry.
So let's talk about that. Because as I've said, Jennifer, humans are bad at proper names. And what I find interesting about memory is it's remarkable that we remember the things that we do because our brains were never designed to remember everything. Okay, that wouldn't be good. So names are tricky, and there's a few things going on in that scenario that you described. The first is paying attention. So you were doing that. But quite often when we meet people, we're walking down the street, oh, hi, what's your name? We just aren't even listening. So paying attention is important. The second is simply short-term memory. So when you are meeting five people, it's going to be much more difficult to remember that than if you were meeting one or two. Quite simply, how many can you store in your brain at once? And as we get older, short-term memory gets a little bit smaller. But the third one is that your brain has actually absorbed that information, but you do not have an easy way to retrieve it. You don't have an association. And that's really the challenge with proper names is we don't have a way to associate it. So, so one thing is to take a little bit longer or to do more processing. So quite simply, when people came in and they're introducing themselves, you could have them write their names down. That gives you a little bit longer to process it, and it gives you something visual to look at. So it's another clue. Um, the other thing that you could do is some type of association. Earlier, before we recorded this, you said you remembered somebody's name because it was the same as your sister's name. So that makes it easy. If somebody was named Sue, oh my gosh, I have a twin named Sue. So you could do it with famous movie stars. I don't know if you're as old as me, but like Irene could be Irene Dunn, for example, or there might be a famous actress. Now, the other way to do it is with something called the memory palace. Have you heard of the memory palace?
Oh, and you'd think doing what I do, I would have.
Well, I read a book. It was a fun book called Moonwalking with Einstein. And it was about the memory tricks that people use when they need to memorize, let's say, 100,000 digits of pi.
No, thank you.
So the idea of a memory palace is that you start to create visual images in your mind. So when you said Irene and then the dad's name was John, I'm just telling you what came to mind is an eyeball sitting on a toilet. Now
Okay.
I know that's weird. In our neighborhood, it's funny, we have somebody named Irene and her husband is Carrie, and I pictured somebody carrying an eyeball. But this is just another way to do it. It's kind of an association type of thing. And so the main thing I'm saying is that it's not easy to remember names. We're not designed to do it. If you can associate it with something else, that's great. But it might take a little bit longer. When I do presentations and people raise their hands, I say, "What's your name?" And if they say Susie, for example, that's easy. I can compare it to my twin. If they say something else, I need a little bit longer to create an association.
Well, I'll have to work on creating associations. I always assumed my struggle was because I'm very visual. I have a really difficult time coming up with those associations like you were talking about. But my biggest success at remembering a name was a lady that shows up at our community dog park. And because the dog park has its own pond, and I have a golden retriever, so you know what that means. She would show up every day, same time, same outfit, same dog, same place. And then her name obviously didn't change. So it took me no time at all to remember her name. But the regulars that come that I've seen for 2 years, and they sit in different places and they wear different outfits and they show up at different times. I'm still struggling with some of their names.
Well, and you identified another key to memory, and it is that repetition and that consistency. The repetition is one of the reasons that we can remember jingles from decades ago. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is. Like, why do I remember that? But I can't necessarily remember a name. So repetition, and in that scenario you described, there's very much of the sameness. Her name, as you said, didn't change, but it's the same location, the same outfit, the sameness makes it easier to remember. Well, good discussion about memory. I have more ideas for you in terms of why memory is often imperfect.